Welcome to RAD Health Radio, where we have the conversations that you wish you had with your doctor. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Cooper, chiropractic and functional medicine physician, combat veteran, husband, father, and lifelong student of human performance. I spent my life chasing the tools and techniques to maximize human potential, and along the way, I prevented calamities, learned from setbacks, and discovered what really works. As my friend, the Mango Man Wayne Pickering says, a setback is just a setup for a comeback. And this podcast, this is your setup. All right, so as we begin, I'd like to talk to you today about challenging the status quo. And challenging the status quo in the context of your view on what your role in health is. So I'm looking to bring on the rise of health generators. You know, as this health generator idea comes to mind, I would like to instill in this podcast, if I have an overarching goal for this podcast today, it is going to be gaining the mindset that allows you to become the catalyst for your family's wellness, as well as your own, obviously. If you were to do a little introspective thinking right now, and you thought about the relationship that you have with yours and your family's health, would you say that you are managing sickness or are you generating health? The difference could be very life-changing for you as well as your whole family. So it is worth a little contemplative time to think about that, and we shall begin. So when I was 20 years old, a little story about how I came to this health generation mindset. When I was 20 years old, I was in the Army. I was stationed in Fort Myer. It's right outside of D.C. And I remember coming home for Christmas at one point, and I stopped into like one of these big booksellers, right? Like Barnes & Noble style, big box bookseller. And maybe it was Barnes & Noble. I don't remember. I remember there were a couple competing ones at the time. And I came across a book that, the spine of the book, the title just jumped off the shelf at me. It was Total Wellness by a guy named Joe Pizzorno. He's a naturopathic doctor who co-founded the Bastyr University. It's a school in just north of Seattle. It's a naturopathic medicine school. And something about that book, I think it was the way that they described things that I would have already you might have heard of in the health generation world. So diet, exercise, mindset, avoidance of toxicity, these kinds of things. But the way they described them in that book, or the way he described them in that book, it just sang to me, and it was the way I needed to hear it for some solid buy-in. And I grew up in a standard Western medicine household. And so I just needed more of a scientific explanation for why these natural remedies worked. And funny enough, I actually didn't finish the book. It was like the catalyst for my entire, embarkment on this natural health journey. And I didn't read the whole book. Mainly, I wasn't a reader at the time. And all I needed was a start. And so I actually read the nutrition section. There were sections on these other categories of health generation, but I read nutrition, and the way it broke down the specific compounds within certain foods and the physiological actions they had within the cells, and just broke it down in a way that really made me understand, which made me buy in and believe, and then just push forward on this path. It was what I needed. And so that was my start. And one of the main takeaways that I take from this shift from the modern healthcare model, which is very much a sick care model. It is based on managing sickness, not actually generating health, which could resist sickness or stave off sickness ever happening, is that health is not the actual absence of disease. It's a state of vibrancy and robust health that you exist in. It's not just the absence of disease. It's this you being a badass state, a badass in health state. And that's really the crux of it, is this resiliency and this robustness that you can build within yourself. And the cool thing about this mindset shift from a sick care mindset and sickness management mindset into health generation mindset is you have an agency mindset. You have this ability to take actions and make choices that will build and push you into a direction that leaves you less susceptible to disease, less susceptible to body breakdown and these ailments that people will talk about as just the normal aging process. But aging like shit is not normal. It may be normal in society, but it is not the normal physiological process that should be happening in people who are putting the right stimulus forward so their genes can express their healthiest and happiest state. Most people are stuck in this reactive health cycle, where you're just kind of going about your life, and then something bad happens, and then I've got to react to it. So our goal is to flip that script and build habits and choices that push the boundaries of how healthy can I be, which resists all these negative consequences that could come. So the problem with a reactive health mindset. So the default mode of modern health is this reactive mindset, right? We kind of have been chatting about this thus far, and people will wait until something breaks before they pay attention to it. And now I don't necessarily mean like a broken bone, but your health breaks down, and then I feel so bad. Now I've got to take notice of it. And that is the standard idea as far as health goes, well, at least the way people manage their health. And hopefully you're not that person. If I'm talking to you and you're like, dude, I'm not that guy. So quit yelling at me. I'm not that guy. I'm not yelling at you. I'm just expounding upon what I see in the population as the norm. And so if you're not that awesome, if you are the norm, don't sweat it. I'm not making fun of you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I am going to give you a way out. So let's see. So here's an issue with that. So one of the issues with just waiting till something breaks down to fix it is that the effort required to now bring you back to balance, to bring you back to this level of health that you'd actually want is way more. If you put in little bits of effort along the way to build, and maintain, the efforts are very small. So each individual effort doesn't have to be so gargantuan. But if you wait and you've built up some bad habits, I'll just say bad habits that aren't health building and generating, by the time something breaks down, there's a massive momentum behind health habits. And so there's more effort and difficulty in changing it once they've built up, to be a large, massive movement, right? And so if you've engaged in these shitty health habits for long enough where you get sick or something happens to you that's bad, and now you want to correct that, not only do you have to physiologically build back a system that has gone awry and is struggling, you also have to push against the mass of health habits that you've lived for however long, in addition to having to go even farther in your progress to get to a healthy state. So, what doesn't help is the healthcare system itself, because the healthcare system is, and when I say the system, I'm talking about its tools. So the healthcare system's tools are designed to stop death. So essentially, they have these great tools if there's a crisis going on. And those happen. So I don't totally poo-poo the allopathic medicine system, because without it, we'd have a lot of dead people that wouldn't be dead otherwise. So in the context of I get in a car accident and I've got broken bones, I'm bleeding out, whatever the case may be, where it's a crisis, the first place I want to go is a trauma center and a hospital. That's the best place for me to land so I don't die. If I have a rapidly spreading infection, good example, I probably want a course of antibiotics. That's going to be my best bet for saving my life. However, once the crisis is over, and now I'm not on that death's doorstep, I'm not in this precipitous downward spiral towards end of life, the tools that are available in the medical system are inappropriate for generating health. And that's the issue, is that in the system, they don't have a transition from crisis management into health generation, which is really essential for you to reach some higher degree of health that can resist disease. And that is what I would like to instill in you is the idea that you need to design your life around health generators, but then to give you some tools to do so. It would be a simple correlation to associate societal norms in many other facets of our life to the general attitude towards healthcare in our population. And that attitude is kind of I'll offload my responsibility to someone else or the government or some other system that's in place so that I just don't have to think about it, or I don't have to do much. And the problem is that the interventions aren't awesome. And so it doesn't give you the best care, it doesn't give you the best outcomes. and it's your life, it's your body. I think if, at least this is what I think for me, and I don't like to extrapolate to other people and say like, you should think this way, but you're listening to me. So I think you're asking my opinion. So if I say understand that, I would never badger you and try and, bully you into a mindset or an opinion, but I am telling you that, this is what I think. And if you look up to me in any way or look to me for advice, then you should follow this. So that passive mindset toward your health, it just doesn't work because nobody gives a shit about you more than you do. And nobody has the insight into what's going on inside here, inside your mind, inside your body more than you do. And so to offload that is it's just a recipe for failure. So what does it mean to be a health generator? One, there's that mindset that we've been talking about thus far. So it goes from fixing problems to building resilience. Fixing problems would be that more normal in the population mindset. You wait till the problem happens and you fix it. But a health generator mindset is one where you build resilience against these issues from coming on in the first place. We have waiting for symptoms to optimizing function. I like optimizing function as a mindset. To think, build resilience. When I say that in my head, and I say these examples because maybe one resonates with you better than another. But when I say building resilience, I'm very much thinking physical. And so just for whatever reason in my head, I'm thinking the way that I'm working out is one to create resilience against whatever physical things may come my way. But, whatever. Optimizing function for me, I think physiological function and, cellular health and metabolic function, these sorts of things. And then delegating health to owning it. The agency mindset, which is that mindset of owning your own health and your own responsibility for generating your health and taking care of your health, that mindset is so essential. And, it's funny with practice, I have patients come in to see me, and a determinant that I have where I know right off the bat that their outcomes will not be as good as someone without this quote that they say. And it's funny that I hear these same words so often. A patient will come in and they say, "Hey doc, fix me." That idea of coming in and telling someone else to fix you, it doesn't bode well for how good your outcome is going to be because you're not taking agency, you're not taking ownership over your role in that health generation. So, it is and in the context of family, I like to talk about things in context of family because, I'm a dad and I like helping dads because there's a lot out there for moms already. And I think it's great that there needs to be, groups that are focused on helping certain groups, whether it's moms or dads or maybe you got an aunt and uncle support group. But dads seem to get forgotten when the parenting conversation comes on. So that is one reason I like to talk about dads because they need it. And one of the things that is a reality is that we have generational impacts to our choices. So we hear about generational impacts in some other contexts as well. We have generational trauma. We have generational, I don't know what terms I'd use, but like generational poverty mindsets, things like this. And I don't really like those talking points because you're also not using an agency mindset. So I will talk about generational effects and an agency mindset that it's the point of this agency mindset is to take control over your family's future. So what are some generational effects? With just being a physician, something that happens in your initial interview with the patient, and you talk about the past medical history, and you will talk about family medical history. So with a family medical history, what in the hell, family medical history, why do you care about that? Well, we talk about a family medical history, and typically there are three main questions that get asked in a family medical history and have to do with cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. And the idea is to predict this person's likelihood of developing one of those conditions. Well, if you think about those conditions, those are extremely lifestyle-oriented conditions. Now, there are some genetic factors. Say you have a less robust efficiency of detoxification enzymes due to actual genetic expression of those enzymes because the base genetic code for them is a certain way. And so its max production is less than another person. If its maximum production is less than another person, then they might develop some condition that is associated with that poor detoxification ability. Great. But diabetes? Heart disease? I mean, there are some hereditary factors that are genetic factors with heart disease. By and large, those are lifestyle conditions. And so I don't know where this quote came from. I think it's awesome. It's probably a comedian. And the quote is, what runs in your family? Not running. It's funny, but it's true in so many ways. You might have a family whose dietary practices are trash, total trash. And you might have just an extremely carbohydrate heavy familial menu. And so their recipe book is just sugar shitstorm carb fest and not very nutrient dense. This is just what the family does is their passed down generational food choices. Well, the chances of that family having diabetes running in their family is pretty high, but is it because of some inherent genetic weakness, or is it because they do things that induce diabetes? It's probably the latter. And so our goal is to offset that by choosing lifestyle habits that your kids watch and adopt because they're watching you do it, and they've lived it their whole young life, that are health promoting, health generating, and then they pass those on to their kids because that's what happens in your family, is awesome stuff. Let's see. How do you do this? That's really where we're going, right? How do you do this? How do you shift your mindset from this reactive mindset into this agency mindset that is health generating? The first step is going to be educate yourself. Now, depending on where you're starting and what your background ability is to differentiate between good and bad information, this could be the most difficult stage of this whole thing, step one. But if your ability to do that is good, maybe you have some background knowledge that is already present, then it might be an easier step. In either case, it is the first step because you have to know stuff to implement stuff, right? And I would say that, some of the reason that this could be a difficult step is that there's just a milieu of information out there. And I should quote finger the information. There's a milieu of information out there because a lot of it's bullshit and or trash information, or very, there's intent behind the information that isn't truth. It might be a marketing reason for the information. So a lot of things drive why people say certain things, and maybe it's an emotional reason that they're saying this thing is true, but physiologically it's not really true, but they believe it should be true, and so they tout it as true. And we have a whole, I feel like now is more than I've ever seen in my lifetime, that there's these more quote fingers experts out there that they talk in a way that makes you believe them. And if you don't know, you don't have a good, solid experience or a way to discern whether information is correct or not, then you believe them because they're convincing in the way they talk. So, it's tough. The commercialization of information, the commercialization just of our, marketplace doesn't really help either, because in order to market a product or a service, you're marketing. Your goal in marketing is to get somebody to believe that your thing is necessary to them. So they'll buy it, right? And so if you don't have a good way to discern information, you got convincing information coming at your face, you'll believe it, right? So, we got some obstacles. My best advice, honestly, to get through this, especially if you don't have a solid background on information discernment, and I don't mean like you're a dumbass, I just mean in the realm of health, you don't have enough of a background to know what's true and what's not true. So you can tell somebody's got great stuff or bad stuff. And that's very normal. I would say the majority of people don't have a good background in that. So don't make make you feel bad at all. My best advice though would be to find mentors, to find people who you trust. And how do you trust them? One, you should trust yourself, because when somebody's being subversive, there's an alarm bell that goes off inside of you. And if you trust yourself enough to hear that and believe that that's happening, then you can avert some informational tragedy. But finding people who you have a strong degree of confidence in, especially a strong degree of confidence in their competence, and then you follow them. That's how I started. I had two main mentors early on. So around that 2000 time frame, when I found that book, Total Wellness by Joe Pizzorno, that was 2000. It was the Christmas of 2000. And shortly thereafter, he wasn't one of the mentors. That was that one book. But then I latched onto a couple of guys who, the things they said made sense to me. I did have some background knowledge, and the things they said made sense. And then ended up fleshing out to be true through other information I had found out, but also through my self-experimentation. And so I was able to trust them because it made sense to me and it worked for me. So finding mentors, and those could be paid mentors and it could be non-paid mentors. A paid mentor, it could be a coach, it could be a physician you have that you really like and trust. And also, this is interesting. Paul Chek says something to the effect, I've heard this quote probably, 15 years ago, so I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something to the effect of, when you're seeking out a physician or you're at your physician, do they look like somebody you want to be like? And if they don't, it's harder to listen to the information they have to say, because it's possible they have great knowledge but don't follow their own advice. But when somebody really looks the part, they're vibrant, they're healthy, they're in shape, they have this glow and radiance about them, and they exude happiness, and you can just tell their life is pretty good. They're happy all the time. They have this vitality about them. You can tell. And when they do, you can be fairly sure that, one, they know the right stuff to do because they actually follow it. And so if you're looking to your physician, make sure it's somebody, honestly, for a coach either. Coach, physician, same concept as far as what you're looking for in this mentorship role, is find somebody you can believe in, and somebody who practices what they preach and have embodied a solid amount of robustness and vitality that you want to emulate. Choose that person and then do what they say. One way that you can latch onto this, leading by example, is the biggest way that your kids are going to learn from you in the context of a family. Now, if you don't have a family and you're listening to this, then this may not matter to you as much, but you probably have loved ones. And just going on averages in the country, if you have loved ones, there's a good chance one of your loved ones has some health problems. It's just the stats of the country, what we have going on right now. And, especially when you're talking about family, if you're talking about, parents and kids, that's one thing. They look up to you. That's just how that goes. But in the context of other family members, like if you're trying to influence one of your parents or an aunt and uncle, whatever, that your role with them is not an authoritative role. Like, you're the kid. So if you tell them things, they may or may not listen to you, or they may not take it to heart. But if they see you living the life they want, that will have a much more powerful effect on influencing their decisions. So this role modeling idea is a powerful motivator for other people in your circle of influence. And so I would say that if you have people that you want to influence, make sure you walk your talk. Another thing, so for those of you who are attracted to shiny objects like biohacking, you might have heard, if you have not heard the term biohacking, this isn't meaning to you, but if you are man, that biohacking, that sexy stuff, it's all like the coolest cutting edge things. If you don't have the base lifestyle habits in place, the biohacking is not for you. It is not, it's kind of like the Supplementation, a good example here. So, because there's wordplay is kind of fun. So what supplementation is intended to be is to supplement an already good diet. It is not intended to supplant a good diet. And the same thing with biohacking. If you're not doing the base things in your life that would generate health, biohacking is going to potentially be dangerous because you might not have the base physiological health to adapt to some of these biohacking methods. I'm specifically thinking of like cold plunges and stuff like that, where you're doing extreme stress on a body. Because even though I just threw cold plunge out there as an example, sauna's the same way, even though these have health beneficial characteristics about them, they're health beneficial because they're a stress stimulus on the body such that it is under the amount that would injure the body, but enough to stimulate a healing response. And if you have a poor base health, it might be too much stress and it will injure the body. It might not be a sub-injury threshold stimulus. So you want to have these base health habits in place so that you can handle anything else you throw at it that would be a stimulus for growth. Because any stimulus for healing and growth is actually a mildly injurious stimulus that then says, hey, body, get better so we can handle this. So what are those base categories? So base categories would be, food, movement, sleep, mindset, toxicity and avoidance of toxicity, really, and connection with your fellow people, the earth in general. I would say connection with nature is on par with connection with people. So to make it easy on yourself, you should make health the default, not the exception. So you don't, eat Skittles and Ho-Hos all day and be like, I'm gonna do something good for myself. I'm gonna eat a head of broccoli. Let's do it. You munch on some broccoli. Or maybe you're listening to some other people and you say, carnivore's the way to go. I'm going to switch out my Skittles and Ho-Hos for a T-bone. It's not, that is not the move. You make the default, the healthy habits, not the exception. So another mindset piece there, your base lifestyle should be one that is pointing in the direction of making your physiology better. Ways to do that. So how do you achieve that? So environmental design is so important. It takes decisions out of play. So if you are to design your environment to promote wellness, so you're setting up your home for wellness, it's stuff like you don't have trash food in the house at all. Why is it in there in the first place? So you have no chemical shitstorm food in the house. It's all nutrient-dense stuff so that when you have to make a decision on what to eat, the only options are good options. I actually have it's not funny, it's terrible, an example of that. So I've got at this recording, I got a 13-month-old, and she eats the best stuff. You know why? Because that's what I give her. And I have other people in my life that have told me, my kid will only eat X and Y. And you know what it always is? It's always like mac and cheese is one of them. Everyone who's told me this, my kid will only eat mac and cheese is in there. One person was also mac and cheese and chicken McNuggets. And somebody else I think it was mac and cheese and hot dogs. So it was like, not good stuff. And I don't understand that. I don't know if I'm naive because it's my first kid and she's only 13 months, but if they don't ever have access to or get exposed to shitty food, how could they ever decide they're only going to eat it? I don't know. That's just my thing, but you can engineer your house to only have good stuff in it so that when you're hungry, if you got to grab something quick, you've only got good stuff in the house. When it's a decision point to make, I need to make dinner tonight. What do I have? Okay, this is what I have in the house. It's all good stuff. Let's make a meal out of it. So set up your environment so that your only options are good things. So some other stuff that is not necessarily food oriented. So swap out all of the health deleterious, endocrine disrupting, chemical shitstorm items from the house. Now, when I say endocrine disrupting, my head always shifts right to scented things. So scented candles, Glade plugins, dryer sheets, all those things mess with your hormone system. So when I said endocrine system, that's the system that creates hormones. They're terrible and should be banned. It's crazy. So if you want things to smell good, go with essential oils or make your things clean. What else? We have, you know what I actually really like for this context is have dedicated spaces for things. So you have a space for work. If you work out of the house at all, you have a space for working out. So there's some dedicated fitness space that doesn't get made into a coat rack or, used for something else. So it becomes an obstacle to get to the fitness equipment. A space for eating, a contemplative space. This is more important than people think. I think people like to overlook the introspective, contemplative part of life as health promoting, but it is essential. And a specific place for sleeping. Don't work in bed. Don't watch TV in your bedroom. Don't eat in bed. Your bedroom's for sleeping. Maybe one other thing. But it's not for these other stressful, shitty things that people like to bring into their bedrooms. Creating simple, small practices that are daily practices that rack up small wins along the way. Like, here's an example of stuff that I do at the house. So I'll wake up and sometimes I switch the order of these, but I'll go outside. Like today I didn't do anything before I did this. I woke up, I walked outside, I did this, where I did a set of 60 push-ups on the walkway out in front of my house. And it was kind of beautiful. There was sunrise happening. And so I'm like, there's gorgeous colors out there and I'm getting morning light. And part of this, so why would I do this? Part of my goals, and this matters for people, which direction, which of these 6 categories of health generation do you choose first? It depends on your goals and really what you have going on currently. So one of the ones that I wanted to work on is my circadian rhythms and optimizing my sleep environment. So to optimize my sleep environment, I wanted a wakeful impetus early in the morning so that my circadian clock starts early and doesn't, lag on until it's 12 o'clock and my body finally kicks on. And so I get tired way later. I want to get tired earlier so I can go to bed earlier is what I was trying to do. So I do the set of 60 push-ups right out in front of my house in the morning. Feels great. I get to watch a little sunrise while I'm doing it. And then I come in, I take a cold shower in the morning. One other thing I do these mace breaks. Currently I'm doing mace breaks. I've got a mace. I've got that, I don't know if anybody knows Kabuki Strength. I've got their loadable mace. It's called the Shoulder Rock. And if I'm at the desk doing work for too long, I'm like, let me get the hell out of here and do some mace. And so I just go outside and rip the mace for a while. And, honestly, I do it for a couple of reasons too. One, to break up my sitting, but also it's a centerline coordinated joint movement, which is very cerebellally stimulating, and your biggest driver into your cortex is the cerebellum. And so I do it to become more creative and productive at work too. That's a totally separate topic, but since I mentioned it, that's one of the reasons I do that also. You know what? I have go-to recipes too. So I am okay with eating the same thing many days in a row. I don't care because the recipes that I've designed for my life that I love, I don't just eat things because they're good for me. I make them great for me and I make them taste amazing too. So I'm eating stuff that I love eating and I feel great about eating. So I have these go-to recipes. We vary, obviously. It's always within, food decision-making criteria that adheres to our ideals at the house. But, when in doubt, hit one of the go-to recipes. And it's just less thinking, less decision-making that I have to do if I already have the set of recipes that I know are great for me. I know that I like them and I can just nail them whenever I want. That goes for snacks too. We vary in our metabolic efficiency based on things we do or don't do. And so sometimes I want a snack. And if I want a snack, I want it to be an awesome snack. So I make sure that's available. Also, I have a wake up routine with my daughter. So part of that, it actually falls into not only my own health, but I do it more for her. I want her to feel like she is so loved by us that she couldn't imagine it being any other way. And so when we greet her in the morning, it's always an excited, "Oh, Raina, good morning. Oh, I'm so glad to see you." It's that kind of energy put toward waking her up in the morning. I don't have to wake her up. She wakes up happy, which is the cutest thing. But then when I enter the room, that's my energy when I enter the room. And so that is building connection between me and my daughter. My wife does it too. It's like a very wholesome, cute ass thing that we do at the house. And we have a bedtime routine as well. It's obviously not the energetic style of routine to, wake her up and, be excited and happy. It's a gentle, peaceful slide into night. And the time that she goes to bed, which she likes to go to bed 7:30, it's not too far off from when I want to be sliding into my bedtime routine. Because I like sometimes a few hours prior to bed where I've got, my methods my procedures that I'm doing are designed to bring my body down into a relaxed physiological state so I can sleep better. And, I'm, like I said before, I'm trying to optimize my sleep. And then we have some like goal-based meal planning that we do, which makes, again, our food decisions easier because we have made meal plans for the week that we then shop for. And then we have all the stuff, she makes these kick-ass meals that are based on whatever we want to achieve for our nutritional health for the week. And that's some of the daily things that we do that make health decisions just that much easier. So it is important to get buy-in with the family. If you're driving this, if you're driving this change, getting buy-in with the family is really important. And so you want to do it without it being this forceful effort on your part. One, it doesn't feel good to you. And also you get resistance when you're being too forceful from the other members of the family. So the way that I have approached that has been a very goal-oriented path. So I don't like latch on to a fad or some specific product that has to be the way. I say, for example, like, I really want to find some stress mitigation best practices that work for me. And so I try a bunch of shit and I settle on a few that are my favorites. And, for me, it's walks in nature. Nature zens me out really well. So I get sun, I get outside, I get amongst nature. Maybe I watch some ants for a while. My students joke that when I tell them this, because one thing will zen me out so fast is I'll squat over an ant mound and watch those little suckers come in and out with the little blocks of sand in their mouth. And I'm like at peace so fast. Anyway, so I found things that work for me. Maybe it's breathing exercises for you, or it's a walking meditation, or who knows, or like a progressive relaxation works for you for a stress mitigating practice. Maybe it's journaling. There's a lot of options for stress mitigating practices. You start trying a few out, but your goal is the stress mitigation. You're not locked down to, we have to journal in this house. It's, we want to find practices that work for us. You test them out and you see what works. And then you glom onto those, for the future. Maybe you say, I want to have more even energy levels throughout the day. That's one that's really common with people because they get these, peaks and crashes of energy throughout the day. And that sucks. It feels like shit when you're just dumped, because when your mental energy crashes, your emotional energy crashes, and you just don't feel good. So that is a common goal for people. So you start playing with macronutrient ratios maybe in your diet to see how that plays into your energy levels throughout the day. Because if you get more metabolically flexible, as in you're able to use fat for fuel, we can all use carbohydrates for fuel really efficiently. And a lot of us, especially when carbohydrates are available in abundance, your body doesn't really need to switch to burning fat for fuel. And so it becomes very inefficient at doing so. And so throughout the day, you haven't eaten for, an hour and a half and your glucose in your blood has been used up. You get a mad energy crash. So becoming more metabolically flexible is something you would want to achieve with this goal of having more even energy throughout the day. So maybe you play with the macronutrient ratios of your diet. Maybe you heard from somebody that a 4-day fast is a great way to reset leptin and ghrelin levels. These are two hormones that are associated with hunger and satiety. And so you do a fast. So you try a few things, and then whatever works for you, you glom onto it, and that becomes your method from then on out. Maybe you say, my spiritual connection seems to be flagging. That's something that doesn't get talked about nearly as much when we're talking about these health conversations. Everyone loves to talk about diet and exercise, but you're your contemplative mind is very important in inner peace, and inner peace is very important in overall health. So maybe you try a 4-day fast for that. So you could do it to become more metabolically flexible, but also when you're not eating, there tends to be a very contemplative state that flows, and it's usually after day 2. So after day 2, because day 2 kind of sucks when you're doing the fast. If you're just starting fasting, if you're well fat adapted and you have good energy throughout, once you achieve that, then fasting doesn't really, it's not as terrible. But when you're a carb monster and you do a 4-day fast, the first 2 days, second day especially, is terrible. and then your body figures out how to use fat for fuel, and you become more contemplative, and your energy levels come up, and it's just a better experience. Maybe you try, like I said, for me, for a meditative experience, not only is it stress relieving, but there's a certain amount of awe and reverence that comes from nature walking. So maybe you try that for your spiritual connection, and you watch the birds, you watch the breeze swinging the tree branches around, and you contemplate life, and that may bring you back to a more spiritual connection. Give your third eye a little flick and wake it up. Anyway, there's some options for that. Maybe something that's like, it's more regular conversation stuff. Like, I've got this nagging low back pain that has been ubiquitous in my life for too long, and I'm deciding today, like, this is kind of bullshit. I think this should go away. So I want to do something about it. And maybe because you say that, you decide to bring in some functional movement patterns into your movement strategies or your workouts, and you focus on, say, transfer of power from your lower extremities to your upper extremities, because somebody told you, maybe one of your mentors told you, that's a great way to reduce low back pain by having more coordinated interaction between your upper and lower extremities, which is the transfer case for that is the core, which includes the low back. Or maybe you decide that foam rolling is something worth trying, and so you begin a foam rolling routine that includes the hips and pelvis and low back, and try it for a week and see what happens. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, don't. So that's my point, is that you have these goals that you're trying to achieve. You try some methods you find out from your trusted sources may likely work. If they do, you keep them. If they don't, you move on to the next one. Yeah, I'm not a latch onto a fad, like the fad has to work kind of person. I think you should find what works for you, and it takes a little, self-experimentation, but in the long run, it's so much better because you found something that truly works for you. And we're talking about buy-in from the family, and it helps that way because now you give the flexibility to that family member to play around. It becomes fun then because they're interested in seeking out these other options for achieving the goal. You don't become this rigid person that says my way is the only way. That's always nice. It also, what it does, it shows that a failed attempt is not actually a bad thing. A failed attempt is actually a gift because it allows you to then move on to the next thing that may very well be the thing that works. It highlights your health goals that are worth pursuing. So you can teach, it's a teaching moment to identify things that are worth actually putting effort toward. So all really cool things come from this method of seeking to achieve these health goals. Making health goals fun and natural instead of rigid or extreme, it's a big success key because of things that I just mentioned. Your attitude toward these health positive habits, it's contagious. So if you're excitedly engaging in any one of these habits that you're testing out or have found it work for you and continue doing, you're exuding joy and value in this thing that you're doing. That's how it's perceived, and that's how it's imprinted on those around you. As this is good, this is positive. I want to do this sort of thing. So that's how you can, without saying any demanding word, you can influence those around you with this. However, if you begrudgingly go forth with whatever habit you've decided to try, and you have these like negative words like, oh, I've got to do this, I have to do that so that I can, and then you attach it to that health goal, that's a very negative connotation that those around you perceive and then imprint on that health goal, which is just completely counter to this improvement of generational health and health habits that we were talking about. I have a friend that immediately pops into mind when I hear this or when I say this. And you know what I've seen with it is that it does create this, negative relationship with a health goal. In this case, it's a negative relationship with food as it relates to weight and being healthy, quote fingers up again. And so it's an issue that then will have to be resolved potentially on a therapist's couch later. Anyway, closing takeaways for this episode. I would say that it's essential to embody the mindset shift that is going from reacting to problems to proactively building vitality. Essential first step, that mindset, identifying the foundational health building targets of optimizing food, movement, sleep, toxicity avoidance, mindset, and connection. That's the bedrock of this path. So identifying those and knowing that those are even domains to look at, that's very important. And so if I were to challenge you to do something after hearing this, it would be I would ask you to write down these 6 categories. So if you had a piece of paper, put each of these categories at the top and put columns below them. I would say write down the habits that you engage in regularly to optimize each of these categories in the column below that heading. And maybe there's not that many there. Maybe you've got a great list and in a couple categories, then the other categories are pretty weak. Or maybe you just don't even have any ideas at all. It's going to be whatever your case is, So you do that just to give yourself a visual of how you're actually doing in these areas. Then rate them. Go to do a little 0 to 10 scale, 0 being, I am horrible in this category, to 10, I am absolutely crushing it in this category, and see, grade yourself in these categories. It might end up that these grades become guides for where you need to place your effort. And then once you've done this and you've got some grades and you got some ideas of where you think you want to start, get an impression of where you think you could start. And that's a big part in making big health changes, is that you identify where you can make positive changes with the least resistance. And it could be that it's the amount of effort. It could be just some emotional resistance, whatever it is. You want to build upon success. So choose an area that you can see yourself doing and doing well and feeling good about it, and my suggestion is do 3. So, do 3 health habits that you think will be the easiest to implement, and then do them today. You can start them today and make it part of a habit. So you keep doing it. And then as soon as those become really ingrained in your daily patterns and they become easy and it's just part of your life now, then pick 3 more. And when that becomes normal and regular in your life, pick 3 more and you move on in that fashion. So, what I'd be interested to hear also. So do that for yourself. And I'd love to hear your obstacles, because that will help me to help you around your obstacles and just give me more topics to talk about that you actually want to hear. And that's really what I want with this podcast, is for me to help you with things that you really want help with. So if you find some obstacles as you're doing this exercise, hit me with them, whether it's on social media or just commenting on the podcast. Either way works, because I'll look at them both and if it's good, I'll put it in an episode. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope anything I said here was helpful. If one thing I said helps you, then I feel that is a success. Have yourself a glorious day. I'll see you next time.